The political climate in Hungary has grown increasingly tense, with public demonstrations and heated debates dominating the national conversation. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has escalated his confrontation with the European Union, using every opportunity to challenge Brussels' authority and question its intentions. In his recent speeches, Orbán paints the EU as an overreaching oppressor, threatening not just Hungary's sovereignty, but also its unique cultural identity and way of life. This narrative strikes a chord with many Hungarians, especially those who feel their voices are ignored or dismissed by Western European elites. In a fiery address in October 2024, Orbán drew a direct comparison between the EU's influence and the Soviet domination of Hungary's past, accusing Brussels of plotting to undermine the nation's independence. By invoking the deep wounds of historical trauma, Orbán frames current EU policies as existential threats, warning that Hungary's hard-won freedom is once again at risk. He claims the EU is imposing liberal, multicultural values on Hungary, values that he argues are fundamentally at odds with the nation's conservative Christian heritage and traditions. This rhetoric has energized his supporters, uniting them behind Orbán as the self-proclaimed defender of traditional Hungary against what he calls EU globalism and outside interference. Orbán's message is unmistakable. Hungary must chart its own independent path, free from Western dictates, and seek out new alliances as the world order shifts toward multipolarity. This bold stance sets the stage for Hungary's pivot toward the East, challenging the unity of the European project and raising urgent questions about the future direction of the continent. As Orbán's anti-Brussels rhetoric grows louder and more persistent, Hungary is charting a new course in its foreign policy, one that looks beyond the traditional alliances of the West. Hungary is actively reaching out to the East, seeking new partnerships and opportunities that could reshape its global standing. The government's Eastern opening policy centers on building ties with the influential BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which has recently expanded to include Iran and Saudi Arabia. This move signals a significant shift in Hungary's diplomatic priorities. Orbán admires BRICS for prioritizing national interests over supranational control, a stance that resonates with his vision for Hungary's sovereignty. He has openly signaled Hungary's interest in joining, seeing BRICS as a platform for greater independence. At the recent BRICS summit in Russia, Hungarian officials made their ambitions clear. Hungary's future, they argue, may lie with these rising global powers, rather than being solely tied to the European Union. Hungary has aligned with BRICS members on key issues, most notably the war in Ukraine. By promoting separate peace initiatives and distancing itself from mainstream EU policy, Hungary is carving out a unique diplomatic path. This approach demonstrates Hungary's willingness to challenge Western consensus, positioning itself as a potential bridge between East and West. Orbán's government sees this as a way to increase Hungary's influence on the world stage. If Hungary were to join BRICS, it would become the first EU and NATO member to do so, a move that would amplify its quest for strategic autonomy and send shockwaves through both organizations. The move could allow Hungary to leverage economic and political benefits from both sides, while resisting what it sees as EU overreach. For Orbán, this balancing act is not just about alliances, it's about redefining Hungary's place in a rapidly changing world. Hungary's eastern pivot relies on deepening ties with Russia, a relationship that has grown increasingly significant as global power dynamics shift. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has made it clear that Hungary values its partnership with Moscow, even as tensions rise between Russia and the West. At the same time, Hungary is forging robust connections with China, another BRICS heavyweight, positioning itself as a bridge between East and West. Despite sweeping EU sanctions on Moscow, Hungary maintains strong energy and diplomatic links with Russia, citing economic necessity and the need for reliable energy supplies. Russian gas and oil remain vital for Hungary's economy, and Orbán's government argues that cutting these ties would harm Hungarian households and industry. Orbán opposes military aid to Ukraine and blocks EU packages, earning favor in Moscow and providing Russia a dissenting voice within the EU and NATO. This stance has made Hungary a controversial but influential player in European politics, often frustrating Brussels and Washington. Simultaneously, Hungary has become a key European hub for Chinese investment, especially through the Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese companies are pouring billions into Hungarian infrastructure, manufacturing, and technology sectors. Major projects like the Budapest-Belgrade Railway are transforming Hungary into a critical transit route for Chinese goods entering Europe. New Chinese battery plants and high-tech factories are reshaping Hungary's economy, creating jobs and boosting exports, while also deepening economic dependence on Beijing. Hungary resists EU efforts to restrict Chinese tech, viewing China as a strategic partner, not a rival. Orban's government welcomes Chinese technology and investment, seeing them as opportunities for growth and innovation. This economic and political embrace of China challenges EU de-risking strategies, putting Hungary at odds with many of its European partners. Orban's government sees these relationships as essential for Hungary's future in a multipolar world, where influence is no longer concentrated in the West alone. By aligning with Russia and China, Hungary hopes to secure a place in a new global order, leveraging its unique position to maximize national interests. This is Orban's calculated gamble, betting that Hungary's fortunes and security may ultimately lie east of Brussels, in partnership with rising powers. Hungary's relationship with the EU is a study in contradictions. Orban's government openly defies EU principles while continuing to benefit from EU membership. Hungary uses its veto power to block or dilute EU sanctions on Russia and aid to Ukraine, frustrating other member states. In July 2025, Hungary even sued the EU over plans to use frozen Russian assets for Ukraine, directly challenging EU strategy. Legal battles over migration and rule of law have led to massive fines, but Orban frames these as fights for sovereignty. Despite its confrontational stance, Hungary remains a major recipient of EU funds and has no plans to leave. Orban knows that exiting the EU would be economically disastrous, so he pushes boundaries without crossing the line. This approach lets Hungary project strength at home while maintaining vital EU support. The result is a paradox: conflict and dependence all at once. In a surprising twist, Hungary joined the EU's SAFE initiative in July 2025, seeking to modernize its military through European defense funding. This move came after Hungary abstained from the initial vote, highlighting Orban's pragmatic approach. SAFE offers Hungary favorable loans to upgrade its armed forces without straining the national budget. Orban's decision shows he's not opposed to all EU cooperation. He evaluates each policy by its benefit to Hungary. While clashing with the EU on political issues, Hungary is willing to engage when it serves national interests. The SAFE move underscores Hungary's dual strategy, building Eastern alliances while keeping Western options open. Hungary's foreign policy shift is rooted in a fierce desire for sovereignty. Orban frames the EU as a threat to national independence, tapping into Hungary's history of foreign domination. This narrative portrays EU directives on law, media, and migration as a new form of imperialism. The government champions traditional Christian values, opposing what it sees as Western Europe's liberal agenda. Policies restricting LGBTQ+ rights and promoting family values are cast as defenses of national identity. Orban argues that the EU's insistence on universal rights is an attempt to impose alien ideologies. Hungary's pivot is driven by a belief in a multipolar world, seeking flexibility and leverage by diversifying alliances. The quest for sovereignty is the ideological engine behind Hungary's dramatic turn from Brussels. Economic logic is a major force behind Hungary's pivot to the east. The government sees greater growth potential in Asia and the BRICS nations than in Western Europe. Hungary aims to become a bridge between Asia and Europe, attracting massive Chinese investment in sectors like electric vehicles and batteries. These projects promise jobs and a key role in Europe's green transition. Closer ties with BRICS could open new export markets and provide alternative financing, free from EU or IMF conditions. However, heavy reliance on China brings risks, including new dependencies and exposure to geopolitical tensions. Still, Orban's government believes the rewards outweigh the risks. The East offers opportunity, while the EU offers stability. This economic promise is a powerful incentive for Hungary's new path. Hungary's foreign policy pivot raises profound questions for its future and for Europe. As Budapest moves closer to Moscow and Beijing, a new kind of division emerges. Not military, but ideological and geopolitical. Hungary bets it can bridge East and West, but risks isolation from the EU, which underpins its prosperity. If successful, Hungary could become a dynamic link between worlds. If not, it may face economic and political fallout. For the EU, Hungary's defiance challenges the bloc's identity and unity, potentially emboldening other nationalist movements. The EU must decide how to respond without driving Hungary further away. Hungary's journey is a test case for whether a nation can straddle two opposing camps. The outcome will shape Europe's geopolitical map for years to come.